house stood on the corner of Allenby Road and Carmel Avenue. Carmel Avenue was the main street which came down from the sea. Before there was a harbour, it was the seashore, up to Mount Carmel.
The house was built of limestone blocks, like most houses for the Templars at the time. My grandfather was a builder. He had it built with Arab labour, which was usual on the building sites.
Our house was built in 1928, and the house was built out of stone, nature stone from the hills. And we had 3 stories, if you like to call it that. We had a cellar where all the goods were like wheat, barley, whatever we grew in Palestine was kept down in the cellar. In the middle room there was our living area, and upstairs the house was not quite finished, it wasn't lined. One side of the house was 3 boys. In the middle and top, usually my mother had a boarder. And on the other side, the youth club used to have their meetings.
Wir haben in Haifa im Gemeindehaus gewohnt. Da war im unteren Stock der große Saal und auf der anderen Seite auch ein ziemlich großer Raum, den man Zeichensaal geheißen hat. Da war der Frauenverein drin und da war abends der Jünglingsverein und der Jungfrauenverein und da hat es auch Bücherei gegeben. Das ist so von der Gemeinde benutzt worden. Und im oberen Stock war dann die Wohnung.
In our front garden, most of the stuff was in pots because the street was lined with eucalyptus trees and it was very dry area. The backyard, I would say, was, or the garden, about half a hectare, full of vegetables. In Palestine, we could grow a crop all the year round, so we were very fortunate. And most of the vegetables and whatever was growing in that garden, from potatoes to tomatoes to watermelon. A few trees, not very many apple trees, that did not grow too well. But then again, oranges we did not grow at home because there were so many other big orange groves where there was always plenty of oranges left over for the family.
We had a lovely garden in Sarona. Lots and lots of flowers and trees, even bananas, all kinds of citrus fruits, and we loved it there.
Well, the job around the house, there was plenty of them. And Saturdays, first of all, you clean all the shoes of the family. You sweep the yard. You start the copper up in your laundry, make the hot water for your bath at night, get the firewood in for Mum. There was no electricity, so it's all by firewood.
Of course, we all had to do our chores. And I remember I was the youngest. And when the older children were told to do something, there was a call, Marta, do this and that. So they always tried to put it onto me, which wasn't fair, I thought. And sometimes I was naughty and I kicked them.
So we had plenty to do on a Saturday morning. But there was always enough free time to muck around a bit. There was no fences between the houses. So hide and seek, we play soccer, kick goal to goal. Not enough people to have teams, but you always can muck around with the football.
We played games at school, mostly ball games. We were very good. Ruth Leshinsky, or Ruth Ha at the time, and I were the best ones. When we threw a football, everybody who collected it fell over. And we always won. It was 2 parties. There was a field with 2 parties, and we threw against each other. So that was called Völkerball. Or we had Zurücktreiberles, which was you threw a tennis ball as far as you could, and then wherever it fell down, the other party had to throw it back. If I threw that ball, the game was finished. The ball ended in the next block. I was very good at throwing balls.
Well, no, I was too much of a coward to get into mischief. But we played seasonal games. One day everybody played marbles, and then of course we had bikes, and we played polo on the bikes with croquet sticks, very dangerous.
One of my entertainment as kids was swimming. Because it's warm climate, you had 6 months of the year to go swimming. In the early days, we had to walk 1 to 2 kilometers to go to one of them basins in those orange groves. Mainly boys, we never played with girls them days.
Every settlement that we had in Palestine had their kinder facilities. That was very well organised. That is a Templar scene. Education was number one, and everybody, whether they had children or not, was obliged to help with the costs of schooling. And most of the teachers, of course, were drawn from the Temple Society.
6 years old, then I started school, and I loved school right from the start. I was one of the youngest because school only took new pupils every 2 years. So I was just 6 when I went into first grade, and we still had slate boards with a sponge to save on exercise books. And I had a lot of mistakes in my dictation, and I forgot to write it again, and I just wiped out the mistakes and put in, and the teacher said to me, "But Emma, you didn't rewrite that." I said, "Yes, I did." And she said, "Oh, I could weep, you lying to me." And I felt so ashamed.
Mit der Oberschule, wir waren in unserer Klasse nur 7, weil wir waren die Kriegskinder und da waren dann immer so viele Kinder. Wir waren 5 Mädchen und 2 Buben. Und auf jeden Fall haben die Buben tun müssen, was wir ihnen gesagt haben.
In our home, there were very strict rules. My father was a very strict man, but he was a good man. We were sent out of the house if visitors came, because children didn't listen to grown-up talk. So I usually disappeared into the garden.
I was brought up to be honest. What you do right. What else can I say? Respect your neighbor.
Und so hat man uns Kinder eigentlich erzogen. Man hat uns nicht lange Vorschriften gegeben, aber wenn wir was Falsches oder Dummes gemacht haben, hat man gesagt, das darf man nicht tun. Und das hat man sich gemerkt, sonst ist man bestraft worden.
Templar Fest were celebrated with gusto. Holiday times and so, that was a big deal. On Palm Sunday, several people in Bethlehem had palm trees. Well, they got raided every time, and the hall got decorated with palm fronds, and there was always greenery involved. When there was a wedding or something else, they had garlands and wreaths, and so green and flowers, and that was always a very jolly time, and something that we did not quite have the same here.
Templar celebrations was the May excursion. That was the biggest one, which we celebrated in the forest, or in the Haradierwald it was called, between Haifa and Bethlehem, one of the colonies, one of the rural colonies. And everybody went there.
Every year, hitch up the cars, horse cart, and the family, all the families, one after the other, go to different places.
We all took our picnic lunches, you would call it these days, and spent the whole day there, and it was great fun for young and old.
Christmas in Bethlehem was something special. We used to walk from our house down to the schoolhouse in the dark. All the kids had to line up on a bühne, on the stage, and sing and deliver their little verses, and it was great. As a child, you remember things. Everything's twice as high and twice as... I remember the Christmas tree, it was huge, but if I saw it today, well, it would be a nice big Christmas tree, but it wouldn't be huge.
My dreams and plans was to become a farmer, like all the other Wilhelma. I finished after 8 years of schooling, and I went straight into the farming at the age of 15. The 2 last years of my life in Wilhelma, I was more or less the farmer. So the getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, milk the cows, have the milk delivered before daybreak. And then in the hot summer days, you work till about 11 or 12 o'clock, especially in harvesting time. And in the afternoon, you have a rest. And in the evening, you start milking again. So that was the day.
They had wooden forks with white tines, and when you had the grain there with all this bits of chaff still in it, you wait for a nice breeze and then you throw it up, and it blows the chaff away and the grain. After doing it a few times, the grain is clean. All the men, my father, etc., they were expert at it. My dad employed 2 Arabs, one for the stables and chooks, and the other one was for out in the field. Our Arabic as children wasn't terribly good, but we had the main phrases and so on. We could make ourselves understood.
We had a washerwoman, and we had a lady who came to sew our clothes once a year. Fräulein Haschele, she was called. And our washerwoman came every wash day, and she sat in the laundry, which was in the bottom part of the house. And she sat there on the floor with big tubs in front of her and the washing board. Miriam was her name. She was an Arab woman.
The war started for me in September 1939, early September 39, when one evening my father didn't come home. My mother was worried, and only much later, several days later, we found out that he was taken from his car on his way home in the middle of the street in Jaffa by the British police because war had started. We hadn't even realized that.
Viele Leute sind dann noch gerade kurz vor Kriegsausbruch, junge Männer zum Teil mit ihrer Familie nach Deutschland.
We lived in Jerusalem and then we went back to Sarona because Sarona was then converted into an internment camp with barbed wire all around it and guards in sentry boxes right around, and curfew, not allowed out after dark. So I had to, if you wanted to do something after dark, you had to go and sleep somewhere else, like on the big stacks of hay. And we also smoked inside the hay stacks, dug a hole with a candle to sit there and smoked. So, yes, I started smoking when I was 8. and I gave it up when I was 78.
So the house for our family was quite roomy, but when the occupation or the war came and we were locked in Bethlehem with all the people from Haifa, etc., from 8 people in the house it went up to 22 people, and it had to be juggled carefully. But Mum was an expert at it. She was not, she never ever wanted conflict, and she was able to keep the peace like nowhere else. There was one old lady said, ja, auf der Kolonie, da kracht's überall. On the colony, there is strife everywhere, but not at the blacks. So that was our mum. She was fantastic.
During that time, there was a big house search going on, and we were all herded out of the houses we lived in and had to stay the whole day in the schoolyard in the hot sun, whilst the military, the army, searched through our houses and did a lot of damage in there, also stole things. I remember that I had a nice bracelet, wasn't be found afterwards. Even my Zeugnisbuch, what's that? My report book from school was missing. I don't know what they wanted to do with that.
Well, the first 1.5 years, Wilhelma was fenced in as a compound, as a prison, right? Arabs worked outside, we worked inside. We kept everything going.
Und alle Arbeiter, die arabische Arbeiter, haben nicht bereit dürfen. Jetzt, die Kühe müssen melken werden, der Stall muss sauber gemacht werden. Und das sind wir, wo das alles machen müssen. Und es war ziemlich schwer, weil ich habe nicht können melken. Ich musste all das lernen.
When they were putting the poles up and the glass insulators to carry the wires, the poles were outside the wire fence, and Kurt with his Shanghai and a few nicely chosen stones, he could do some real damage. So behind our house and the neighbour's house, the insulators always got shot off, and the commandant was sick of it. He said, somewhere in this establishment there is a rifle, and I am going to find it. At that time, Mr. Pockenberg, who was a bit older than some of the others, he was the elder for the colony there, and he said, no. He said to the commandant, just give me a bit of time, I'll find out what's going on. He lined us kids up, and somebody must have spilled the beans that it was Kurt. And so he went to the commandant and said, there's your culprit, what are you going to do about it? And he said, I don't believe it. He wanted a demonstration. So we all, the kids, it was a great novelty, all went up to behind our establishment, and he said, right, do your thing. So he got the Shanghai out and shot once, nah, twice, nah. With the third one, he knocked the insulator down, and he said, right, I'm not going to look for a rifle anymore. This is enough. And he said, and to you kids, I just say this, any more damage and there will be no Shanghais in this. I'll confiscate the lot.
Ich habe dann Schulhalter müssen. Es hat nicht genug Lehrer mehr gehabt in Wilhelma, weil viele fortgekommen sind, da war nicht voll Andrea da, und dann hat man gesagt, ich war gut in der Schule und ich bin ja wenigstens 3-4 Jahre älter wie die oberste Klasse. Jetzt wird die oberste Klasse meine Klasse und ich bin ein Klassenlehrer. Und das ist erstaunlich gut gegangen, weil das waren bloß 5 Kinder. Da kann man nicht unartig sein, wenn ein Mensch einem gegenübersteht und alle 5 gleichzeitig angucken kann. Und die haben dann lieb und brav bei mir gelernt und in der Pause haben wir alle miteinander Spiel gemacht.
In Wilhelma, my last teacher was Hulda Wagner. She must have been sort of 18 or something like this, a Hilfslehrerin. For me, she was a respect person. You had to give her respect, but when we talk nowadays, we sometimes laugh. Because she said she didn't know all that much more.
In 1941, a lot of us were sent to Australia under Queen Elizabeth. We never knew where it's going to go.
There, in a bit of a distance, was this huge ship, and as we got closer, it got so huge, and it was the Queen Elizabeth.
The biggest ship in the world, but it was sort of converted as a troop carrier. There were 6 of us in a cabin that was originally meant for 2. But they couldn't do anything to the bathroom, and that was sheer luxury. And you should have seen when we went through the Red Sea, it was so hot, and Helga had sommerfältchen, a heat rash. And I sat with her in the bath, and in came seawater with all phosphorescent. It was like fire coming out. It was really, really wonderful.
The food situation was not good. The food was tailored for soldiers. There was no milk, there were no eggs. So people with small children, they had problems. Every table, longish table, got 1 or 2 German soldiers, a few Italians, but mainly German soldiers, serving the food, and it went like clockwork. It was excellent. And on top of that, there was one with a violin and one with a piano accordion, and we had the most beautiful German music, German songs, and it was fantastic. I can still hear them today.
What I must say is when we got into the trains in Wilhelma, we were treated like a bunch of cows. There you're in, close the door. And when we come to Australia, the first thing we got in Australia is a number. We got a seat on the train. We were treated like humans. We got a packet of sandwiches and a piece of fruit. Down in Palestine there was nothing. You're in there, go. What's the difference?
When we landed there, it was freezing cold. There was a freezing wind. And when we left Palestine, there was a Honung who years ago had taken part in, an old man, he had taken part in the gold rush in Australia. And everybody just packed light stuff, oh, Australia, yeah. And he said, don't make a mistake. He said, take some warm things. He said, it gets terribly cold. Well, he was at Ballarat and Bendigo, and it does get cold. So we were lucky we got that message, and people did have a jumper and so on.
The night we arrived, 6 of us were left behind. Everybody was treated and sent into a room, in a hut. 6 boys stand there under that big tree, and the guards are gone. What happens now? Fritz Katzerweil came past and said, look, we got 2 rooms, but we haven't the kids and all of us in another room. You can bunk into the next room. So 6 of us boys just bunked on the floor of the spare room, 4 feet off the ground in August, wind blowing through underneath. But it was still all fun.
When we got there, there were those tin huts, no lining inside, just tin. Freezing cold in winter, and of course in summer it must have been 50 odd degrees in those huts. You opened the door and went in, and there was a couple of lumps of wood, thick lumps of wood, nailed against the side, against the wall, with one leg down and the rest was supported by the wall inside, with wire netting, and there was a hessian bag lying on the wire netting and a bale of straw. So we got there and we had to make our own mattresses, quick smart.
The family in the camp, often evening, everybody went to up into the dining halls, and then women took their knitting, and my father translated the English newspaper. And he was marvelous because he would, what was that thing when the British borrowed from the Lend and Lease? He translated that for Lump und Pump. And then he translated freely, and everybody said, that's not in the paper. He said, it's not what's written in the paper, it's what you read between the lines that is important.
The food in camp, especially in Camp 3, where the family where we cooked ourselves, were beautiful, perfect. On a Sunday, they did not deliver the meat. Usually the proviant, everything was delivered in a horse cart. On Sunday there was nothing. So we had to go out the camp with wheelbarrows to get the meat. And you know what a baconer is? A baconer is about 50 kilo of pork. We used to get 10 of them for 330 people. Just a match how much meat that is for each of us.
In the camp, yes, we had an excellent school because we had quite a lot of Catholic priests. You couldn't make them do kitchen duties or wash washrooms. So, and they were absolutely happy to teach us. Very good teachers. I would not have been able to have an education like that because there were 3 boys to be educated, and I would have just gone on and learned shorthand and typing and finish up in an office. But this was really a bonus for me because those teachers were very, very well schooled.
People from the camp, they had a special stamp made. There's still the Tatura internment camp stamp. It's got about the circumference of a tennis ball, and there's a bayonet and the top bit of a rifle, and Tatura internment camp number 3. They stamped all the reports with that stamp, and that stamp was recognized. People like Hugo Messerle, etc., they could get straight into the Melbourne Uni or the establishments.
Meine Mutter hat sich entschlossen, zum nach Deutschland gehen, weil dort war schon meine Schwester Magda mit ihrem Mann Otto Storz und ihrem Sohn Hans Rainer. Da war Paula, da war der Otto und der Alfred. Und dann hat sie gedacht, es wäre gut, wenn die Familie beieinander wäre, denn mein Vater ist 1941 in Wilhelma gestorben.
We were interned in Bethlehem from middle of December 1939 until we were exchanged to go to Germany in 1942. My father said to us we should go to Germany to learn a trade or a profession, because all I could do was milk cows. I mean, that's not a profession, is it? So my sister Erika, whose husband was in Germany anyway, she had a little boy, and my sister Ilse, she had a fiancé in Germany who'd gone out with the German men at the beginning of the war on the last Greek ship. They all gone to Germany. And we went on this transport, but instead of going straight through what we thought to Germany, we were put into a camp which is called Atlit. We stayed there for 6 weeks, and it was the most horrible, dirty place I had ever been to. It was my first introduction to bedbugs, for one thing. It was riddled with bedbugs, and the toilets and showers were so grimy and dirty. We did nothing but clean for days on end. And when the sergeant who was in charge saw how clean our compound was, he suggested that we should now go to the next one and clean that one up too. We said, not on your life, thank you. We've had enough.
It was quite an adventure. At that stage I was 8, and it was an adventure because we hadn't been on a train before, nor had we been able to see new things. In other words, we were rather isolated in Palestine. The Templars were within their colonies, and that was it, especially the younger ones. Our school years were rather disrupted by air raids. We just got there was alarm, we had to walk back to 20 minutes to our house, and it became, after a while, we didn't go. The school just shut down.
Da waren wir ziemlich geschützt vor Bombenangriff. Einmal ehe wir gekommen sind, ist eine Bombe gefallen gewesen, nicht weit, aber in den Feldern, nicht weit weg von mir. Aber sonst war man ziemlich sicher, man hat aber immer den Fliegeralarm auch mitgekriegt, wenn in Stuttgart Bomben gefallen sind. Und wir sind dann in den Keller beim Haus gegangen. Das ist noch mal ein paar Stufen tiefer gewesen, als die Waschküche war. Aber manchmal ist man einfach nicht, vielleicht nicht aufgewacht oder was, und die Nachbarin von über der Straße hat gerufen, die hat es gemerkt, hören ihr denn nichts, es ist Fliegeralarm, gehen in euren Keller. Man ist mal so in den Keller gegangen, aber war nicht gefährlich in mir. Aber in Stuttgart sind gleich drauf, kaum waren wir vielleicht eine Woche da, etliche Leute, die mit unserem Transport nach Deutschland gekommen sind, ums Leben gekommen. Die waren im Rückwanderheim, wo eigentlich meine Mutter mit uns auch nachgehen hat, bis man die Papiere in Ordnung gebracht hat oder so. Aber die Magda hat darauf bestanden, er kommt sofort an diesem Abend noch mit mir nach Moor, er bleibt keine Nacht in Stuttgart. Das hat sich dann als guter Rat herausgestellt.
There was no school, so what do you do? And this is where the war became of interest, because you took interest, you saw aerial fights right above us, which was most impressive for a sort of a 12, 13-year-old, because you tried to identify the planes. Was that an American? You knew who the German was, or was that the German shooting at the other one? In other words, you were in the middle of the war. Sometimes you saw whole soldiers, whole platoons of soldiers moving along, heavily armed and so on, in their tanks and all this sort of thing. So we were very much involved.
Inzwischen hat der Theo Wagner mir von Australien aus regelmäßig geschrieben, schon nach Palästina und dann auch jetzt nach Deutschland. Und wo er 21 Jahre alt wurde, hat er mich gefragt, ob ich Briefe bin heiratet. Und dann habe ich zu meiner Mutter gesagt, was soll ich denn sagen? Hat sie gesagt, sag doch ja. Dann habe ich ja gesagt, per Post. Und habe mich so mit ihm verlobt.
My parents, who were left in Bethlehem in Palestine when I left to go to Germany, and my sisters, they had to flee when the Jewish underground came to Waldheim and occupied Waldheim and shot a few people.
Und uns hat man gesagt, in 48 Stunden müsstet ihr weg. Jetzt nur 70 Kilo. Ja, was nimmt man da alles mit? Dann hat man schnell alles wieder in Seesee gepackt und andere Sachen in Kisten. Man hat alles dahinter lassen müssen. Der Gärtner hat noch unser Pferdegespann mit und der Wagen und noch verschiedene Kühe. Und die Hühner sind alle da umeinander geflogen und was mit denen passiert ist, weiß ich auch nicht. Und meine arme Katze, die war noch, haben die Männer erzählt, wo da die Kiste aufgeladen haben, das war noch auf der Bank gelegen, auf der Terrasse.
And in Haifa they boarded a ship which took them to Cyprus, where they were in a tent camp on a beach. It's Golden Sands it was called.
So, da waren so Kriegsgefangene, deutsche Kriegsgefangene in Zelte. Und für uns haben sie nur kleine Zelt aufgestellt, wo gerade 3 Mann Platz hatten. Meine arme Mutter, da ist man nicht fertig gewesen. Man hat bloß in der Mitte können aufrecht stehen. Aber man hat eine Unterkunft gehabt, nennen sie uns so. Reisebettstelle mit einem Strohsack. Leintücher haben wir mitgebracht und ein paar Teppich, oder später Federdecke. Ich meine, wir Junge, war für uns herrlich. Bis für die Alte war es schwer. Da hat man eine große Barack, ist übernommen worden von den Kriegsgefangenen. Die waren noch ein Teil dort gewohnt, oben. Da haben wir noch eine Küche gehabt und einen Speisesaal. Und dann im großen Zelt ist dann auch noch später eine Schule gemacht worden für die Kinder, die da waren. Und für die Kranken eine andere Barack, wo dann abgeteilt worden ist, wo die jeweils zu 2 drin schlafen haben.
And then they had the option either to go to Germany or to Australia. If they went to Germany, they would have been classified as enemies. And if they went to Australia, they were classified as enemy subjects. So of course, my father opted for Australia.
We had to have accommodation and work before we were allowed to leave the camp. So myself, Hans Richter, was out before me, and he sent me a telegram and it said, work, accommodation available. So I showed that to the authorities and I got me pass to go. And the day come, hop onto the train, land in the Flinders Street, Hans Richter was not there. But there was another Italian friend I knew just as well from camp, and he picked me up and we went out on the Spencer Street and there was a tram standing full of people. It must have been some kind of a strike. And he said, push in, push in, push in. Kalanta. So we pushed in and we got to Hans's room. And there was a room, enough for a bed and a mattress next to it. So he pulled the mattress off, one slept on the bed and one on the mattress. The next time we walked down Collins Street to look for a job, and fair enough, one of the inmates from Camp 1, Italian, worked in a cafe and he was the boss there. We asked him, Martinelli, have you got a job? Yes, you can come and wash dishes. So that's where I landed the next day, wash dishes.
My father was very friendly with one of our commandants who lived quite next in Tatura. He lived, and I went there as a maid, and there were 3 little boys under 3. And they still write to me. And I just fell in, and of course my contribution to the German war effort was not to learn English. I could speak French, I was very good at Latin, I could talk a bit of Arabic, but not English.
Sind wir aufs Employment Office in Manly gegangen und haben geguckt, ob wir irgendeine Stelle kriegen können. Und er hat dann in der Limonadefabrik bei Miners irgendeine körperliche Arbeit gefunden und zu mir haben sie gesagt, am besten wäre, wenn ich in einer Familie arbeite, dann hätte auch mal Englisch besser werden. Ich habe wohl Englisch gelernt in der Schule, aber australisches Englisch habe ich nicht unbedingt verstanden. Da ist mir der Dialekt arg aufgefallen, wie anders das war.
So I went and looked for another job. And I looked and I looked and I looked, and everywhere I went, they said, sorry, what you did overseas doesn't count here. And so I got to know the family of the Bingles. And so he was a company director. And when I was looking for work, Mrs. Bingle rang me at the private hotel I was living in at Bondi. How did you go today with work, looking for work? I said, same as always. And she said, look, my husband said they're looking for a typist in the office. Go in and see the accountant. He knows all about it. So of course I went. The accountant, Mr. Perry, said, you know, we can't pay you the award wage because as far as we're concerned, you have no experience. I thought, yeah, just wait till I've got my foot in the door. But Mr. Bingle wants you to start, so you can start. And when I started, I had to type long double sheets. They were the agents for cattle stations up in the Northern Territory, and I had to do the yearly accounts, and I had to join those sheets in the middle, and you couldn't see where one ended and where the other one started. That correct. And they all said, never seen work like that before. I said, yes, considering I have no experience, not bad, is it?
I wanted to join the public service because I thought that is the safest. And Commonwealth Serum Laboratories to me sounded wonderful because it sounded like really something. I joined CSL in 1948 and I started off having to sweep floors. And I made it up to production manager of the blood. So I'm very proud of that. And they have a special tree which has got a plaque underneath. This is the Emma Polacek. So maybe I'll get them to put my ashes there because that's already a plot.
In early 50s, it was not very easy to get a job. When I left the cafes, it was not for me to be in a cafe. So I made roof tiles. I slaughtered chickens for a year at the Sunbeam Poultry Farm where everybody else worked. And I started building here. I bought this block. My mother-in-law bought it when it was subdivided, and she gave it this block in 1950. So I started making bricks on the weekends up front here. I got 2 Templars to lay the bricks for me. I get Hans Pisch and Alfred Edelmeier to do the inside, all this hard plaster, the ceiling. We moved into here, Christmas 52.
Später haben wir unser Haus angefangen zu bauen, aber damals hat man immer wieder auf Materialien warten müssen. Alle Leute haben damals Häuser bauen wollen, die Soldaten, die vom Krieg zurückgekommen sind. Man hat warten müssen, dass man das richtige Holz gekriegt hat und vor allen Dingen die Dachziegel, da hat man einen extra Antrag noch stellen müssen, dass wir ein kleines Kind hätten und jetzt unser zweites erwartet und dass man das Haus also nötig braucht. Und dann hat es geklappt.
There was this sticking together because outside of that, in the first few years, you were the foreigners. You were isolated, very much so. I remember one day in a Sydney tram, when they still had trams, I spoke to my mother, I think it was, or to my father, in German. And somebody turns around and says, "Why don't you speak bloody English?" You know, not exactly bloody foreigner, but that was implied. Not much has changed, I guess, when you look around. But it wasn't easy to assimilate. It wasn't easy, and I certainly wasn't. Here comes the good old German. I changed my name. I didn't use my first name because first day in school, Herman a German, so that was it. I used my second name, Ralph, which was a proper name, and that nobody could tell the difference. After a while, you couldn't tell that I was a German.
Ich habe immer denken müssen am Anfang, man braucht bloß Geld zum Sachen kaufen. In Deutschland war es so schwer gewesen die letzte Zeit. Da hat man für alles Bezugsscheine gebraucht. Nicht bloß mit Geld hat man einkaufen können. Und die Rationen waren sehr knapp, nachdem der Krieg zu Ende gegangen war. Und da hat man jetzt Gemüse und alles kaufen können, gerade wie man will hat. Ich denke, das ist wunderbar.
We were very fortunate not to be sent somewhere else in the world, because it was such a free and coming up country. I mean, in the olden days you could touch anything and make it a success. Bit harder now, I would say.
The Templars as a whole have done wonderfully well in Australia. Goodness me, there's doctors and professors and you name it. Nurses, tradespeople, everything you could just, and they're all doing well. Nobody's been locked up in jail, good people. So we benefited from being here, and Australia certainly benefited from having those Templars here.